Hi and welcome, everybody. We are so excited for our training today. I am going to be your go-to tech person. My name is Katie Collins. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here on behalf of the Community Health Training Institute, or CHTI. We are funded by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. And today's training is brought to you in partnership between DPH and Health Resources in Action. And our content was developed by the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, along with our wonderful panelists who we're so excited to introduce you to today. This training builds on a couple of other sessions we've done this year. We had a fall training called Fall Food Systems and the Impacts of Climate Change, and a webinar in April hosted by MAPC focused on how rural and urban farms are changing with the climate. So we kind of did like an overview in the fall, a focus on farms and food production. And today we're focused on the intersection of climate change and the post-production systems. So we're going to hear from folks who work in that space. We're really excited for Rachel, our moderator from MAPC, and the panelists to get into the nitty-gritty details on food distribution, food access, food waste, all of these different topics that they specialize in. And then just a quick sneak preview of the agenda. We are also going to have a spotlight from Rebecca Davidson from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources. So we'll go through some panelist introductions, do the spotlight with Rebecca when she arrives, and then we'll have a moderated Q&A by Rachel. And then we'll have some opportunities for you all to ask questions if we have some audience questions. All sounding good so far? Cool. We are so excited. So last tech note before I pass it over to Rachel. We do have a live captioner with us. So if you would like to see the captions, look for the CC Show Captions button on the bottom right-hand side of your toolbar. If it's not there, you can click on the more dot 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 button to add it to your toolbar. And then once it's there, you can click it and your live captions will show. And a reminder that you can move that box around so that it is not inhibiting your view of the screen and it's where you would like it to be. If anybody does have any sort of tech issues, feel free to message me. I'll be watching the chat on the side. Okay, I think that's all from me. Rachel, over to you.
Thanks so much, Katie. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We're really excited to have this kind of next session of our focus on climate change and the food system. We, as Katie mentioned, will be focusing on food access kind of broadly, and we'll define that. But first, we'll get grounded in defining a food system, just so we're all on the same page. So, food system encompasses everyone and everything it takes to get food to your plate. Food system is all the processes that go into producing, transporting, and consuming food, as well as the workers and the many elements involved as an individual food item goes from farm to table. It's a complex constellation encompassing many different sectors, including production, processing, distribution, retail, consumption, and resource recovery. So this is a simplified depiction of the food system from the New England Feeding New England initiative. It uses 2022 data, so it's definitely changed since then, but this shows that our Commonwealth's food system employs about 460,000 people, generates over $85 billion in sales. These are obviously the economic impacts that are easily measured. There are many, many additional impacts not calculated by this snapshot. And we're today going to focus on initiatives that aim to improve food access. Last time we focused on, like Katie mentioned, the agricultural sector. And so we'll more broadly be focusing on all the other sectors outside of that. Next slide, please. So a couple more definitions. So what is food access? Food access exists when individuals have adequate resources for acquiring appropriate foods for a nutritious diet. I've posted the FAO definitions here just to share. So food security is more the population level metric here. So food security exists when all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious foods. And so why are we talking about food access and food security in relation to climate change? Climate change will have very dramatic impacts on food security and already has started to have impacts. So COVID-19 exposed the risks of food systems reliant on global supply chains. And in a similar way, climate change-driven hazards cause disruptions and thus affect food security. This map here is from the latest Greater Boston Food Bank report, showing that upwards of 40% of Massachusetts households experience food insecurity in 2025. Black, Latinx, and multiracial households experienced higher levels of food insecurity. And climate change will exacerbate these inequities as it disrupts an already inequitable food supply. Seniors and people with disabilities who are more likely to be isolated or less mobile are also at higher risk for food insecurity due to climate disruptions. The disruptions to federal programs like SNAP and local food purchasing support have made food access more difficult and been very consequential for families across our state. Geopolitical factors and wars have made trucking and transportation more costly, and food prices have increased, as we all know. So this is the backdrop against which our panelists' work builds both climate resilience and food access. Next slide, please. So in this webinar, when we talk about climate resilience, we're talking about both coping and managing the impacts of climate change and preventing those impacts from growing worse. Geopolitical conflicts, economic fluctuation, and other local and world events make protecting our food supply and feeding our people even more difficult on top of climate change. But for this webinar, we're focusing on climate, but acknowledging that those issues shape our food system's resilience as well. So what does building resilience to climate change, excuse me, look like in our Commonwealth's food system? Building climate resilience to support food access looks like protecting vital regional food assets from flooding, or protecting workers and shoppers from extreme heat during farmers markets. It looks like processing and distributing food locally or recovering surplus produce that would otherwise not be harvested or end up as waste. And it looks like building community around shared food resources. There are many ways to integrate climate measures while increasing food access, but luckily, you don't have to take my word for it. I want to kick off our panel by sharing the panelists, photos of the panelists on the next slide. And I'm just so excited to hear from all of them who do amazing work across the food system in different ways, but many overlapping ways, and really have made a positive impact on our food system and continue to do so, and are very inspiring people in general. So I'm going to start it off by passing it to Ann Yeagle, Executive Director of Growing Places in Central Massachusetts, who will introduce herself. Then we'll pass it to Stephanie Venizelos from City of Watertown and Usha Thakrar from Boston Area Gleaners. So let me pass it to Ann.
Thanks, Rachel. Can everyone hear me? I see your thumb, Rachel. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about Growing Places and the work we do. I can't see everyone on the panel, so I can't tell exactly who is here and who I'm seeing because I can only see the top. But hopefully this is not redundant and you haven't heard a ton about us, or hopefully you have. Next slide. So this is a lovely map of north central Massachusetts. There are 27 contiguous communities in north central Massachusetts, and you can see on the right, on the left, is where we are. So we are in central Massachusetts at the very top along the New Hampshire border. So a couple facts about north central Massachusetts. We often get overlooked because of Worcester, and people just think central Massachusetts, or they just think we're in Western Massachusetts, which is not the case. We're a real thing. Secondly, we are the home of Johnny Appleseed, actually, and we have the most orchards in the state. So we have really strong agricultural roots in our region, which is kind of what brings me to our presentation today. So Growing Places has been around since 2001. We actually started as a grassroots organization. I did not found us. Two lovely women from Harvard did. We are truly a grassroots effort, and they founded the organization by getting different businesses to donate raised garden bed materials so they could build gardens for low-income households in our region. I have been the executive director of Growing Places for 7 years, so I'm a little dangerous at this point. But also, I grew up in North Central Massachusetts, and my background is I've worked in food systems and public health since basically the beginning of my career. I'm a dietitian, so my pathway is a little bit different from what a normal dietitian does. But I really believe in the way that we increase nutrition security is by leveraging what we have and making policy system and environmental changes that really have a population level impact. So when I came to Growing Places in 2018, we were still doing a lot of community gardening, but when you looked at the health of our region, we had some of the highest nutrition related chronic diseases in the state, directly related to poor nutrition access and intake, but also we had a really low intake of fresh fruits and vegetables. Come to find out, our region has 180 small farms in it. And we thought to ourselves, why are we teaching people how to grow gardens, which is very resource intensive, and we can only garden several months of the year because we live in New England? And why can we not have a bigger impact by engaging our local food system? And so we set off on our journey in 2018, and in 2020 received a regional food system partnership grant from the USDA and began to really look at our food system holistically and start to engage our partners. What came out of this assessment when we hired New Venture Advisors business consultants to create a contextualized food system model for North Central Massachusetts is that we wanted to leverage the assets in our region, and we wanted to work together. So instead of having a food hub, they said, you need a regional food center or food campus because you have all these assets that exist already, and how do you leverage them? What was missing within our food system was really the mid-tier. It was really all the way from after you produce and harvest the food, all the way to when you consume the food. So that whole middle part was missing. Like, how do you get this food with all these farms to our community? And so Growing Places and myself, the leader, said, we can do this. We can be the mid-tier. And so we set off to be the mid-tier. And so what that looked like is we started with aggregation and distribution, but really the center of our food center is a local food production or processing center. And so that's where the little star is right in Gardner, Massachusetts, right in the center of our region. And so after millions of dollars and lots of investment and lots of grant writing and a lot of love, we stood up a regional food center in Gardner in July of 2025. It took about 3 years to actually build and get everything done. It is an old school in the city of Gardner that we are also with a food pantry and a senior center. So it's a community hub, and we have the kitchen. And so the pictures you see are part of our regional food center. Next slide. And so you can see the vision of Growing Places encompasses our environment, and our mission also encompasses environmental sustainability. So everything that we do, in addition to food access, always has a lens of environmental sustainability built into it. So whenever we create a strategy, whenever we do anything, we look at how are we impacting food food access and nutrition with a lens of values and equity, but also how are we making sure that it's environmentally friendly and sustainable and resilient. And so when you look at the food system that kind of Rachel showed, this is just a different model of it, same thing. I like yours better, Rachel, that you can really see all the ways that we're able to affect the climate and environment through the mid-tier, through the work we do. So I'm just going to talk about a couple examples, and then I'll let y'all ask questions when it's time, but I want time for my panelists to talk. Next slide, Rachel. And so one of the ways that we could easily do it is we have a home delivery produce program that we accept SNAP and the healthy incentive programs for. So mind you, we're aggregating from about 40 to 50 farmers. 30 of them are small and from North Central Mass. And then we're working with places like the Boston area Gleaners and the Food Hub with Usha to also distribute from larger farms. But one of the ways that we knew that we could really cut down and increase accessibility around food waste was partially prepping the produce. One of the things that we heard from our consumers, our home delivered participants, was, I have no idea what to do with a beet. You give me a beet, I have absolutely no idea how to prepare it. It takes me forever. Then we heard from older adults, why are you giving me a butternut squash? I have to peel it. I have difficulty being able to do that. And then I have to seed it. And then I have to, and then we have different demographics who don't know what a specific fruit or vegetable that we grow in our region is because they're from other places and they're not familiar. So we said, okay, how do we create something that's accessible for the people who have the least ability to be able to purchase and prepare local produce? And so we created these Fresh Chef meal kits. And so think of Blue Apron and think of HelloFresh, but think of just with produce so it's HIP compliant. That's the Mass Healthy Incentive Program. And so we created these Fresh Chef kits where we, at Growing Places, prepare them. And I'm going to show you some of the data we have. So that's one way that we're able to reduce food waste. And it's pretty impactful. Wait till I show you. Next slide. And the other way is we have this. This is obviously really our EcoVim because you see the sign on it. Before any food goes into the processor, it all must be cut into quarters. So you can tell that we have to give our staff little reminders. So this is a food dehydrator, actually. And you can see kind of the bottom of the picture, what comes out after we dehydrate our food scraps. So when we make our beets, we peel our beets and the peel goes into this EcoVim. When we do carrot sticks, the ends of the carrot and the peel go into the EcoVim, and it turns it into a dehydrate that kind of looks like coffee grounds. And while it's running, we run it every day, it smells just like whatever it is kind of roasted. So if it's Brussels sprout season, kind of smells like Brussels sprouts in our kitchen, but like extra charred. And so it comes out looking like coffee grounds, and it creates a closed loop system because that product is able to be given to farmers and used as fertilizer. So it closes the loop within our food system. So it goes right back into the earth and is regenerative. And actually our production manager is a small farmer in our region, and she oftentimes takes the product and she uses it on her farm. Next slide. So this is some of the data on food waste reduction that when we piloted the Fresh Chef kits that we collected to make sure what we were doing was really having the impact that we intended. And so the chart on the left shows the waste diverted from the landfill because of the EcoVim. So mind you, scale this up in your minds. We had 50 participants, right, doing this. So there would be, and this is in pounds, so there would be 80 pounds of product, and then 2.8 pounds of food scraps from that particular thing. It was just a mashed sweet potato, and it would it was about 4% of the product that was diverted from the landfill. So you can see overall, just by using our EcoVim, almost 20% of the food was diverted from the landfill. And I don't know if Usha is going to talk about any type of stats or anybody else's, if Stephanie is, but food waste is one of the greatest environmental pollutants. So by us being able to do this is a huge impact to our environment, because again, just think about scaling it up. And then if you look at the household level, so that's the institutional level. If you look at the household level on the chart on the right, you can see that the number of participants who reported waste. So week one, we would give the participants the whole product. We would, if it was mashed sweet potatoes, we'd give them just regular sweet potatoes, and we say do something with it, and they'd have to weigh it. And then the second week, they would get the Fresh Chef kit, and they would have to weigh their scraps again or whatever was left over. So you can see the massive amount of waste we saved at the household level. And household level is actually where the greatest waste takes place. It's actually not the institutional level. So by us doing that, we're diverting it, and then also we're reducing waste at home. Next and last slide, please. And then another way, because I told you I would just tell you a couple of the ways, because we could be here all day, that when we are thinking about how we as a mid-tier can be environmentally sustainably minded, is you think about the distribution and the packaging process. There is so much food waste when it comes to that. One way that we are reducing food waste is by using reusable buckets that when we give to our institutions, that they give back to us, and we essentially recycle them every single time. So they're a little more expensive on the outset because we have to purchase them, and we get double the amount we need, because then when we're waiting for them to come back, we have to prepare them for the next week, and vice versa. And we're working with our distributor, who just happens to be Usha and the Boston Food Hub. And we are providing these potato wedges in sustainable buckets that are reusable. And so that's a really great way for us to reduce packaging at an institutional level. So I will stop there and give plenty of time for my compadres, and just thank you for listening, and hope you got some ideas.
Thank you, Anne. I'm going to pass it to Stephanie now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel and Katie, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here, and I hope to leave you all with some good information and learnings from what we're doing in the city of Watertown. And I just want to say thank you, Anne. Your presentation was very informative, and I'm really inspired. I wish you were closer. So I'm with the city, assistant director of a new human services department. And if we go to the next slide, please, I can tell you a little bit about my work over the past 10 years for the city. So Watertown, I'll start with, for those who may not be familiar, we are a small city. We are just west of Boston, and we border Boston, Cambridge. To the west of us is Waltham, and Belmont is also close by. And we're a city of about 35,000 people. We're a very diverse population. We've got over 40 languages spoken. And we are a growing, developing city, like many. There's a lot of changes, and there's a lot of housing, hopefully, that's going to be built over these next several years. Watertown does not have a lot of green space, but we are on the east of us. About 90% of Mount Auburn Cemetery is in Watertown, and the other 10% is in Cambridge. And that, for those who don't know, is a botanical garden. It's an arboretum. So there's quite a bit of green space that is contributing to our community. And to the west of us, bordering Waltham, is Gore Place. And of course, we have the Charles River that runs through us. So just to give you a little snapshot of climate change and how we're impacted. And also in Watertown, we have about roughly 20% of people who are food insecure, and that includes people who are using SNAP benefits and people that we know are eligible and not enrolled. And when we go above that threshold, we know with rising cost of food and many other things, food insecurity is probably a lot higher than we even have data for. So just to give you a quick background, I started with the city 10 years ago in the health department as a new role, community wellness manager. And that role was meant to establish new wellness programs working across many departments. So I worked with the senior center and recreation and community development in the library, and we formed really strong collaboration from the early days. And since then, we've established a lot of new programs. So Live Well and Food Access are the two areas that I've been focusing on over the past many years. And we can go to the next slide. Great. So Live Well Watertown is a coalition. It's a group of members who are representatives of city departments, outside agencies, and health professionals that are residents who have been involved over the years. So this is a group that comes together several times a year. We share information and resources, and we look for ways to collaborate. We talk about grant opportunities, and we talk about what the emerging needs are. So from the beginning of the time I worked in Watertown, we always looked at local data and whatever the priorities were, and a lot of the programming was set up around those things. And currently, we have many established programs that are considered or under the umbrella of Live Well, and they are regular walking programs. We offer free stress reduction at the library every week, year-round. And we do lots of healthy eating and cooking and other specialty programs. Next slide, please. So the city programs that touch on food access include the City Food Pantry, the Seasonal Farmers Market, which I'll talk more about, and we'll be focusing on this presentation and panel today. And then the other city programs come out of the schools. So they have a freight farm, a newer freight farm, and they have a school fridge, a community fridge in one of the schools. And they also have different programs that are working with food waste and recycling. I don't work in the schools, I work with them. I know that they're doing lots of good programming. The freight farm is donating a good amount of food to our community fridge. So community programs that are working on food access include a second pantry. So this is run by the Catholic Collaborative, and the community fridge, which is now on library property. So we are now running a community group runs a community fridge. And then Watertown Community Gardens, a longtime organization, is doing a lot with food security. They work with different housing establishments. They have gardens on city property, and they continue to grow. And they are also doing a lot with food donations. So these are some of the groups working on food security. Next slide, please. So the Watertown Farmers Market, when I was hired, I was also tasked with transitioning the small market that was happening in the city, run by a small business and operating off of the former Athena Health that was in Watertown. So we transitioned it to the city, and it's now in its 13th season, and we've grown quite a bit. We have at least 800 visitors on average every week. We have quite a robust food access program. We serve roughly over 150 and maybe many more. I don't always have the data from the farms who are offering HIP benefits. So we've seen a steady increase, like many, since COVID in our annual food assistance programs. We have match programs and HIP and other specialty programs. And most of the funding comes from grants and donations. And we partner with many local agencies, including the Watertown Housing Authority. And looking ahead, my screen is, there we go. So something we are working towards, and part of expanding our food access efforts, is to pilot a winter market. We're hoping to work with, we are in conversation with the schools and working with the freight farm who could provide produce for us in the winter months. And other partners, including the Housing Authority that we work with year-round. Next slide, please. So switching to climate change, just to talk a little bit about the city of Watertown. This is a top budget priority, and it has been for several years. So we have a very robust effort coming out of the city to address climate change. So the city sustainability team and the DPW, Department of Public Works, are working under the Resilient Watertown umbrella, and we have a climate and energy action plan that is guiding many efforts over many years. We're working to increase tree canopy and address heat islands, many of which are in lower income resident neighborhoods. So there's really a lot going on. And we also have city or community organizations that are climate focused, and they are doing a lot to complement or initiate even more good work in this area. So we're fortunate to be working with such a committed team and a committed city on climate change. And last year, MAPC worked with the city on a climate change and health vulnerability assessment. So we have that report to guide us over the next couple of years. And food access is a priority there. And that's something that we're using as we continue to address these risks. Next slide, please. So just going forward with this sort of strong network of city and community organizations who are working together, we continue to prepare. We're doing things and we're continuing to prepare for what we know is coming, more extreme heat, other climate concerns. This past winter was another challenge. We don't have them very often, but it presented different challenges. And then strengthening our food access network and programs. So that is part of my new role, is to oversee the food access programs. We're going to be expanding the food pantry. We have a new mobile vehicle for the Human Services Department. So there's lots there that we're looking forward to doing over the next couple of years. And just our shared goals to build resiliency for unanticipated change and challenges, which we know are always around the corner. So that's an overview, and I hope during the panel and afterwards people are asking whatever questions you may have. There's a lot more I can share, and I hope to do that during the panel. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we'll hear from Usha from Boston Area Cleaners.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to talk about this work. I am going to apologize in advance. I sent Katie an annoying slide deck with animation and then forgot the part where I wasn't actually going to be controlling it. So we'll just see how this goes. But next slide, please. So a little bit about who we are. Boston Area Gleaners has been around for a little over 20 years. We're a food systems organization that work at the intersection of farming, food waste, and food access. So if you look at my little diagram on the screen, that little blue triangle is where we live. That our entire mission is focused on addressing the challenges of lack of access to affordable and healthy food while good food is being wasted and while farmers are going out of business. We try to address all of those three problems with our programming. Next slide, please. Our primary activities are sourcing. So we do food recovery only in fresh produce, both on farms by gleaning and sort of the old-fashioned, we take volunteers out into farm fields and we harvest surplus produce and we bring all of that produce back. And then more recently, we've leaned into the wholesale recovery market. Millions of pounds of food and specifically fresh produce are rejected at the wholesale level, and those end up not in compost, but in your nearest landfill. Anne mentioned earlier some statistics around food waste. Food contributes to 40% of the methane emissions from landfill, and methane, just for fun, is 10 times, 20 times more destructive a greenhouse gas than CO2. Everybody talks about CO2, but methane is much, much worse. And the picture it's an example of the kinds of stuff that we get wholesale recovery. What you can't see in those packages is those nice little flats are those little fancy English cucumbers you get at the grocery store, each one individually shrink wrapped in plastic, and then each little pack of 3 shrink wrapped in plastic. And if this were to go in landfill, it would go into the landfill as you see it, with all of that packaging with it. We bring all of that food back to our headquarters. We'll go through it. Sometimes it's good quality food. Sometimes it's compost, but at least it gets depackaged and composted and not in the landfill. Anything that is good food, we will distribute to our network of about almost 100 food access partners now in Eastern and Central Massachusetts. We also have a fleet of trucks that we operate to distribute unrecovered produce, and we use those trucks to help support our food access partners to help them get food from point A to point B without having to have their own transportation resources. We operate a program called Boston Food Hub, which is designed, that's a program through which we partner with Growing Places along with another 50 or so suppliers. The Food Hub is a middle of the supply chain operator, works as an aggregator and distributor on behalf of local farms to help increase market access. That fits in terms of our overall mission around food waste reduction, because on-farm food waste is largely caused because the farmer doesn't have a market for their product. And then we own and operate a farm in Acton to help supply healthy fresh food through our network of food access partners, some of which goes to the food banks through the state program, which is the Emergency Food Acquisition Program, is what the A stands for, I believe. And then otherwise, everything else we grow gets donated to our network of pantry partners across the state, including Watertown. Next slide, please. So it takes a lot of resources to do this. We're very cognizant of as much as our work has a significant positive environmental impact in reducing wasted food and keeping it out of the waste stream, we also run trucks and refrigerated coolers and have farming equipment and heat greenhouses in the middle of February. And so we're constantly looking at the climate impact of our work. This is just a little bit of an overview of the sort of size of our operation. We got a lot of people and a lot of trucks and a lot of infrastructure to do this work. Next slide, please. And this is just a quick overview of the statistics of the organizational impact on the food system. We moved to this property 5 years ago, and this is sort of a 4-year look back of the growth of the work that the facilities that allowed us to really grow in a lot of ways. The biggest number that I think is interesting on this is the pounds of food diverted from the waste system and brought into the food access space. So that was a little over 3 million pounds in the fiscal year that just ended. And as you can see just from that chart, our work is continuing to grow in that way as we're trying to increase our capacity to continue to meet the need on the food security side of the world. So, we like to believe that we have a closed loop system here in terms of recovering as much food that is good food, getting that distributed out to people who would lack access to that healthy food otherwise. And then we do have, because we're a farm, we have a state certified agricultural composting program on our property, and anything that isn't what we would bring home to feed our families, we will take out of its plastic packaging and we will compost, and then that compost goes back on the farm and it grows good food and it feeds people, and that's what we do. That's actually all I have. I just wanted to give folks a quick overview of the organization. I think that's all I have. Is there another slide? No, okay.
Excellent. Well, I want to first thank our panelists for giving us a snapshot into their worlds and the amazing work that they do. We heard about all different aspects of the food system, all different kind of cross-sector programs, the municipal lens on this intersection. We heard the word closed loop in a few of the presentations, and I think that's something I want to jump back into if we have time later in our Q&A. But I want to start off by asking about what are the biggest challenges for each of you when it comes to climate change. I think there's resilience and to climate built into most aspects of what you're all doing. But want to just start with kind of the biggest challenge that you see coming or that you're already facing. Stephanie, would you like to start that?
So in Watertown, certainly not unique to us, is the extreme heat. So for many reasons, the extreme heat is a challenge, and it's something that, we almost dread at this point because we know it's coming and it's going to be bad, but when it's not here yet, you forget. So from the farmers market perspective and other outdoor programs, because we actually run park programs and many of our other city departments are doing a lot outside, recreation, the schools. So there really needs to be a lot of planning that comes into place. On the farmers market end, we've had some real hot years, as we all know. Some of the strategies, do you want me to get into the strategies, Rachel, or just talk about yeah? Um, so we didn't always do this, but now we reserve a room in City Hall. The farmers market is held in the park right next to City Hall, so we reserve the room right off the park, and we call it a cooling station. So the very first thing we do is a lot of communication when we see the weather. We talk to all of our vendors, we talk to staff and volunteers, and even in our newsletter, we name it. We know this is difficult. We've set up some heat mitigation strategies. So we make the cooling center available to everybody. We have cool packs. We bring a cooler out and we have ice packs so people can actually, when they really can't go inside and they just need to cool down. We've had people pass out over the years, which is very frightening. We make water available for free and we try and make it as cold as possible on cold days. For staff, we've even had those little battery operated fans that mist. And we've even moved the market manager tent into a shaded area. So we've done a lot to try and make it more bearable. And we would love to do more like the big misting systems, but although there is water in the park, it's not in an ideal location. We're working with the sustainability team. We're looking into different things. So those are some of the easier things that we were able to do. We were really fortunate to have a room to use in City Hall, and it really makes a difference because people fear that. So from the farmers market perspective, there's that. There's the issue of food spoilage. Food safety is huge, and we've got all these vendors coming. From a larger perspective of human services, we know we have data of the number of households that have air conditioning, and it's quite low. So we know that's something that the city needs to pay attention to. They've done a lot more around communications during heat waves of where they can go, what city buildings, and there's more messaging around how to take care of yourself, watch out for your neighbors. So that's also something we're thinking about, vulnerable populations. And then access to food. So if people have to take the bus and the walk there is really hot, they're not going to do it. So there's so many levels of heat and the stress itself of it. People are so stressed and they may not even want to eat. So it just presents a lot of challenges, especially when we have these heat waves that go on. We're doing what we can. And as I'd mentioned, Resilient Watertown and the MAPC report, we're really working on different strategies, developing protocols and procedures for all the city departments that run programming, and then also developing a communications group because we really need to be planning now for things we can be doing and what can we share. If we're going to invest in some big infrastructure, how can we share it between departments? And happy to take questions whenever.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think very I guess poignant and relevant because it's heat prep week or extreme heat week in the state and thinking about planning ahead. It sounds like your team is really on the ground and forward thinking at the same time. So thanks for sharing that. I'm going to jump to Anne or Usha to share their biggest challenge with climate change. Usha.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm going to say weather, and that's going to oversimplify it a little bit, but farming is very weather dependent, always has been. extreme weather has a very dramatic impact on the supply chain. And it could be extreme weather here. So folks remember the year a couple of years ago where most of the Pioneer Valley got flooded out and how that impacted the supply of food and the cost of food, and of course the revenue side, income for farmers. Similarly, I think this made the New York Times a couple of weeks ago. Right now, the wholesale price on a case of tomatoes is almost $100 a case, which, just so you know, and the really should be around $20, $25 a case. And most of that is because of a frost event in the southern part of the country that killed off a bunch of tomato plants and driving up the. And by the way, the $100 tomatoes are crappy tomatoes. They don't taste very good. Um, and there's sort of these secondary and tertiary effects that are climate related as well. So, in New England farming, deer are a significant pest pressure for farmers. A couple of years ago, the cost of the wood that you make deer fencing out of quadrupled because of wildfires. Um, Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And so, it's interesting to think about it. It's not just the direct, like, is it a dry year? Is it a wet year? Is there a drought? Has it been too hot? Was there an early frost that killed off the peach blossoms? And those sort of quote unquote normal variations in weather, but these extreme climate weather events have this significant downstream effect in a variety of ways, right? And then now there's also global events that are, I mean, there's an argument to me, but some of that is climate. We're very fossil fuel reliant still. The current war in the Middle East is having this sort of downstream impact on farming because the single largest source of ingredients for fertilizer comes from the Middle East, and the cost of fertilizer tripled overnight, which is then going to increase farming costs, which is then going to increase food costs. And, so each of these little things add up in a way that really is this broader challenge in terms of supply of food, and then obviously impacts food inflation, which of course impacts food security.
Thanks, Usha. I think it's always hard to kind of tease all these things apart because they are so intersectional and have a domino effect or a really complex effect on each other. So thanks for illustrating that. And let's hear from you.
Yeah, so I mean, I echo both what Stephanie and Usha said, obviously, and I'll add one more kind of piece that's interesting for production facilities that maybe I can shed some light on, is that we're in an old school building, and there's nothing resilient about an old school building, and it is not energy efficient in any way, shape, or form. When it is hot out, it is hot in that building. When it is cold out, it is cold in that building. And so for us, like not even being outdoors, but not being able to navigate temperature variation inside of our building because there's no temperature control infrastructure in the building. And then what really exacerbates it is we have all these machines in there that we're using constantly. You heard Usha talk a little bit about her refrigeration, right? And like how much just heat that emits. We have blast chillers. We have this massive walk-in refrigerator that we need to have indoors in order to palletize things because we're operating year round. We have these things called Harvest Right, freeze dehydrators. We have, you name it, and we have it in there in order to make the food accessible. So when you think about it, we're doing all of these things, right, to help reduce and mitigate climate change. And then we have these machines that aren't necessarily as environmentally friendly. And we don't really have a good solution, to be honest, of how to mitigate those challenges. And so, anyone out there other than, refrigerant, right, and making sure that our refrigerant meets specs, right, to be environmentally friendly, it's really difficult for us. So I welcome, that's a challenge I'm putting out there to anybody who has any solutions for us to help mitigate some of these challenges that are very unique to us that we face without just putting air conditionings in and mini splits in every single room that we have, which is also highly highly expensive for us to be able to do with the amount of heat that's being emitted.
Thanks, Anne. So I think you've all touched on many different and again intersecting um, challenges from climate change and how complex the food system intersection with climate change is and also kind of reinforcing of itself. So thank you for illustrating those challenges and like Anne said, any if folks want to share any resources, feel free to do so in the chat, both from your own experience or what you've found helpful as tools.
Rachel, can I add one thing?
Absolutely.
One of the things that I think is really important to note is that we live in a state that actually pays attention to these things and cares about these things and provides opportunities for nonprofits like ours and municipalities, funding opportunities and solutions, and is really leading the way in a lot of, like, everything we're talking about here is like 100 times worse in other parts of the country. And I think that that's worth noting. Like, every once in a while will talk to people, and I live in my little Massachusetts blue bubble, and I'm very happy here. Thank you very much. But it is remarkable to think about how much we are challenged by some of these things, and we have a lot of resources that are designed to help support organizations like ours, and our farmers are, get a lot of support from MDAR. And I think as we talk about these things, like recognizing that this is actually a much bigger problem in many, many other parts of the country, not to be such a Debbie Downer about it, but that's all.
Not a Debbie Downer. Thank you, Usha. I think you've provided a perfect segue because we have Rebecca Davidson, the Director of Food and Climate Equity, on our panel today as our next guest. So, Rebecca, I don't know if you're ready to jump right in, but I think that was a great segue. And we are very fortunate in the Commonwealth, as Usha was saying, for all of the support. And Rebecca's going to tell us a little more about that support.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rachel. And I'm so happy to be here with you all. I'm sorry that I didn't join earlier, but it's great to be on a panel with Usha and Anne talking about this topic. And I have a couple slides here for you all, but I'm also happy to answer any questions offline or connect with anyone who wants to learn more about our department. So as Rachel said, my name is Rebecca Davidson, and I'm MDAR's Director of Food and Climate Equity. And in this role, I work across the department to support our teams and our programs in working towards achieving both our environmental justice goals and our climate goals. So I like to start these talks with just framing the mission of our department, which is to cultivate a robust and equitable agricultural economy and promote a safe and resilient food system and preserve a healthy environment for Massachusetts farmers, animals, and our consumers. And addressing the climate crisis is a very key component of that. As I'm sure you all know, and I'm sure has been discussed earlier today, we're already seeing the impacts of climate change on farms through droughts, flooding. There's a lot of unpredictability, frost, freeze, that's making it really difficult to farm in the state, and it's having direct and indirect impacts on our food system. So I'm just going to share a few slides here to give you some updates on what we're working on at the department. You can go back a slide, actually. Thanks. I like to center what we're doing with just this slide. This is a billboard campaign that we ran to really spotlight that our farmers here in Massachusetts are climate heroes, and that there are ways to support them. At MDAR, that's what we do. We support them in achieving their goals and helping them in their efforts to be environmental stewards, be more energy efficient, and also build resilience. And we also know that there are some deep inequities in our food system, and I imagine that was also discussed today. So we're just really raising awareness of the importance that our farmers play in having a healthy, sustainable food system. Next slide. So before I share some updates, I just wanted to say that, you know, as I said, we're already seeing the impacts. But as Usha said, we're fortunate to be in a state where we recognize that we all need to be doing more about the climate crisis so that we can become more resilient in the state. Next slide. So you'll see a theme across the strategies that I'm going to talk about, and I like to just give a primer on these two terms, resilience and mitigation. So resilience is all about our ability to withstand disruptions to our agricultural food system, and it's represented by this agricultural dish that you see here on the screen, which is moving stormwater away from fields. The flooding that happened in 2023 was very impacted a lot of our farms. We saw, you know, millions and millions of dollars in damages, and resilience involves coming up with strategies so that we can avoid those future disruptions. And when we think about the food system, resilience is making sure that we're able to feed ourselves in these times of disruptions. We know that local resilient food system is very important for our state, and particularly one that centers equity, given all of the systemic disinvestment and healthy food access across the state. And then mitigation is the other side of this coin, and that involves reducing emissions in the first place. And this is something that we've been doing as a department since 2008, where we've seen over 200 projects that are working on energy efficiency, whether that be wind turbines, solar panels like you see on this screen, and we have current grant programs that help to support farmers in this regard as well. And so all of these plans that you see on the screen reflect both of these strategies. We have plans in Massachusetts that work to reduce our emissions as a state, and then we also have plans that work to build resilience. So this is just to show that we're fortunate to have alignment across our state in this regard, and food and food systems show up in all of these plans as well. And they shape our programs and our policies related to climate. Next slide. And then these are some of our particular plans related to building a resilient food system. We know that all of these issue areas are intersecting, whether it be access to farmland, whether it be building a resilient food system, and then also making sure that we have an environmental justice lens that is woven throughout all of these strategies as well. And this slide is very busy, but it was developed by my colleague, Julie Stelmazik, who's the director of the Division of Food Security. And I think it's really helpful for demonstrating how we have programs throughout the state that address supporting the food system in all of these various stages. So on the left-hand side, you see all of our programs related to land preservation, environmental programs, to production, agriculture, and then processing, aggregation, all the way up to food waste. And so these are programs that are not all run by our department, but we do run some of them. And you know, we are working to be more connected with other agencies that run these programs so that we're aligned in terms of our thinking. And one of the ways that we're trying to get more aligned is in climate resilience as well. So just to give a couple examples of these programs, one is the Food Security Infrastructure Grant. This grant is our largest program, and really the goal is to increase access to locally grown food for residents of Massachusetts. There is a focus on resilience, and as such, we've heard from a lot of our awardees. 95% of them have said that they feel more resilient after having completed their project with FSIG. We really want to spotlight the importance of this grant program in supporting the overall food system. There have been millions of dollars put into our food system through this grant, and it's been quite transformative. The pictures that you see on the screen are from Fruit Fair, which is a grocery store in Chicopee, which brings healthy local food to a food desert. And then I wanted to share a program that is currently open, which is our Mass Food Ventures program. And overall, the goal of this program is to invest in underserved communities and increase access to healthy, affordable food. I've put down the list of eligible entities. It ranges from municipalities to nonprofits or for-profits and individual residents of the state. And you can learn more on our website. Happy to send these links out as well after the session. And then I also wanted to talk about another key part of resilience in the food system, and that's ensuring that everyone has access to locally grown, nutritious, culturally relevant food. We know that climate change is going to exacerbate food insecurity and the inequities in our food system. And so these programs are particularly important in ensuring that we have a resilient and equitable food system in the future. So the first I wanted to highlight is HIP, or the Healthy Incentives Program, that many of you may be familiar with. This is run by our partner agency, DTA, but we do support this program. And the goal of HIP is to put money back on your SNAP card when you use SNAP to buy healthy local fruits and vegetables from HIP farm vendors. And so one of the ways that we've been supporting this program through our environmental justice work is to make sure that underserved farmers who are HIP vendors have ability to troubleshoot their equipment or complete any paperwork that they need, because it's really important to us that we have a diversity of HIP farm vendors who are really able to provide culturally relevant produce to their communities. Another program run by MDAR is the Wiccan Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, and this one provides coupons to purchase locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables, cut herbs, and honey. Definitely happy to provide any additional information about how to connect with this program in your particular city or town. Oftentimes the coupons are distributed by local senior centers or WIC offices. And then finally, the Mass Emergency Food Assistance Program is a very large award that we administer, and the funding goes to the Greater Boston Food Bank to distribute around the state to other food banks and food pantries. And one of the ways that we've been working on bringing resilience into this program is to support increasing the amount of purchases of locally grown foods so that we can really make sure that residents who are accessing food in a food pantry are seeing local food on the shelves, and also that we're making sure that our farmers are supported by these state dollars. And we've seen a lot of growth in this area, but it's a priority of ours to continue to provide that support. And then I wanted to mention two programs that are really important and really help to transform the food system, and that we're trying to keep the momentum going. One is the Local Food Purchase Cooperative Agreement Program, or LFPA. This was a federal award that we administered, and it provided over $11 million worth of healthy, nutritious food from farmers, particularly small farmers, to underserved communities. And sadly, the program has been discontinued by USDA, but our commitment to the goals of the program remain the same. And it's incredibly important program. And yes, absolutely. And would love to hear your words on that. And I'm happy to pause there if you want to jump in.
Yeah, super quick. Thanks. So yes, we agree with what Rebecca is saying. And so the grantees, including Usha, who had benefited our communities and our local food systems from LFPA, actually, when the administration, the federal administration eliminated this in March of 2025, we came together with the Mass Food System Collaborative, and we have a working group. And we successfully right now have an amendment filed with Senator Eldridge. And I urge anyone in Massachusetts to please email your senator and ask them to co-sponsor it. And I will put the number in the chat. This is huge. We asked for $7 million. This would fund the program for a year. And when Congressman McGovern came and spoke to the Mass Food Policy Council, what he said was that, you know, if things go the way that would benefit our food systems, our small food systems, that hopefully with the election, maybe we can bring back the federal program, but we need to get it into the state budget, especially for this year, to stop any momentum that's already been lost. Okay, thanks, Rebecca.
Yeah, of course. And then the last program on this slide is the Resilient Food System Infrastructure Grant. This was a smaller federal grant that we administered, and it built resilience across the middle of the food supply chain within states. We're still working on this grant, although we've already awarded the majority of the funds. We're in more of the research and program management side, where we're really trying to help build better connections between different components of the food supply chain to both build resilience and better prepare for emergencies, but also to streamline connections and distribution. So that's another important program that we're still working on. Next slide, please. So we put together a website where folks can learn more, and this is all on our climate webpage. As I said earlier, we had a campaign to raise awareness of what the public can do to support our efforts. And so I encourage folks to take a look at our webpage. You can learn about all the programs that I talked about, and you can learn more about what your community can do to help build resilience at home. And I think that might be my last slide. Yeah, happy to take any questions. And also, you know, if folks want me to share particular programs, we administer quite a few. I'm happy to give more detail about any of them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. As you can see, we are a Commonwealth or a state that really gets it. And we are really fortunate to have the leadership in MDAR and in the state that supports all these different programs. And I would love to hear, thank you, Anne, for starting us off, but I'd love to hear about some of the other policies and programs that have supported your efforts. Anne, Usha, and Stephanie, if anyone wants to start us out. Doesn't have to be state level, can be, you know, policy, municipal policy, can be programs coming from the federal government or the state government, or yeah, who would like to start us out?
I can reiterate what I was saying before now that Rebecca's given the overview, but a lot of what both between the Department of Agricultural Resources and the Department of Environmental Protection, there's a lot of initiatives and funding opportunities. I mean, I literally have one sitting I'm going to submit today and one that I submitted last week. It's grant season for the state. But, you know, especially for organizations that have a clear food security focus and have an agricultural focus, there's opportunities across that spectrum to really connect those dots. I think that the state has a significant commitment and understanding of how important local agriculture and local growers, I say growers because I only do produce, but farmers, aquaculture, et cetera, are to the local food system, and really how to build that resilience within the supply chain really is sort of very focused within the boundaries of our, you know, some people define local as 400 miles, but 400 miles is New York City. So we really think about it as the state of Massachusetts. And I will say, I mean, Rebecca listed off a bunch of funding opportunities that over the years that we've been very fortunate to be able to utilize that funding to build infrastructure, to build our programs. I know Anne has benefited as well. And the state really understands, to Rachel, to what you said in terms of getting it. It's not just getting the pieces of it, but understanding all of the ways in which the pieces fit together. And we're very lucky is what I will say about that. And the legislative support this year around some of the food security initiatives that have been, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of things the state needs. And I think we've seen the working group. Anne's done an incredible job with that group of leading the effort around LFP and some of the other food systems work. And then we have the Mass Food Systems Collaborative, which I don't know if anyone from Emily's on the phone. Um, again, just a tremendous resource in this work for organizations like ours and people who are interested in this work. I'll stop there.
I can say a little bit about what's happening in Watertown. So, with food access being a high priority right now, and certainly with federal cuts and other rising costs, we're just anticipating a lot more need. So, two goals and two things that are in the works. One is to develop a food access working group, and this wouldn't be um, it's not a first step. I would say we're on about a second step. There's already a group that's very connected, and the farmers market is one of the anchoring points for where donations come in and go out. But decentralizing, thinking about how all of our efforts could be more organized and coordinated so that we're making sure that there is a coordinated effort around how food goes out, and also partnering with and working more through our department now. Human Services has its own vehicle that can do food deliveries, and working with other departments, including the senior center. So thinking about how we can coordinate our efforts and be more ready to address it as it comes up. And one other key partnership is with the Perkins School for the Blind. So we're going to be working with them on some food rescue and distribution. And I think there's potential for more partnerships. Watertown is small but mighty, and there's a lot of collaboration. So I think if people can come together and think about how to best tap into resources that are there, that we can be better prepared over time.
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to get involved in policy and advocacy. And so I think it depends on who you are, right? And what you feel, what you have the capacity to do, and also what you feel like you have the ability to impact. Because I mean, you can impact the federal government, absolutely. But I think starting at the local level, a lot of people forget that they have ag commissions in their communities. There are policies in their communities. Rebecca talked about the Farmland Action Plan. That's like hot off the press. There are so many activities in there that people could latch onto and support. There's the local food action plan that was kind of like the blueprint for food access and local food systems, right? That was established by the Food System Collaborative. All of these things were developed by our lovely state, as Usha was talking about, to create collective impact. So we're all working on the same thing. So I think it's really important that when we're doing things, we're using these blueprints and these maps, because it's really, what is it, all the small boats in the tide and they rise, and however that one goes. But we all need to work together. I'm really bad at like analogies and idioms. My husband makes fun of me all the time, but I get the point of it always, trust me. And so I think we need to look at what exists. We need to work together, and we need to leverage, what is there already. And I think, what Usha and Stephanie said, we need to collaborate and network and work together. That is how we can also reduce our carbon footprint and reduce, transportation miles, reduce packaging, there's so many ways that we can do it collectively together. And so I also don't think we need to reinvent the wheel. I think a lot of organizations have really good things going on. And so we're just three of them, and there are many like us in the state. And so I think just working together and having forums like this is really important to hear best practices and to continue to do things like this and just keep it in the forefront. But, just get involved, I guess, is my bottom line. Like, whether it's local, state, or federal, get involved and do something that is going to make a policy and a system change, because that's really what has that like high level impact that is going to make resilience, like Becca was saying.
I'm going to add one more thing to Anne's cheerleading over there. The couple of years ago, the year of the floods, we had a lot of people ask us, how can we help? What can we do? How do we support these farmers? And the answer turns out to be really very straightforward. Go buy from them, right? You want to support the local food system, shop at a farmer's market, go to a farm stand, purchase, put revenue in those farmers' pockets so that they can continue to be viable and provide more food to the region.
Excellent. Thank you, Usha, for that point to kind of bring us back to the audience to ask questions. I think you've heard about a lot of different strategies and ways to get involved and support local food access and access to local food, and ways that the state can support you and support these efforts, and some of the partnerships that have enabled this work. So all of these perspectives and all of the different intersections in your work, I think, have been really rich to hear about and hopefully inspiring to folks. I would love to see if there are questions from the audience. I don't see any in the chat, but feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute. Yeah, we'll open it up. Also, if any of the panelists have questions for each other.
I was going to say, is anyone in the audience doing anything too that they want to share with the group, like around this stuff? I don't know. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
I see some names, and I know that folks are in the audience are definitely doing work in this space, but I'm not going to call people out. At this moment, yeah, I think we'll give it a few more minutes and see if there are other questions. But I appreciate that calling in.
Maybe also while we wait and people think on potential questions, wanted to say thank you all so much for being here, and also wanted to call out kind of along those lines. If you have something you want us to share with the CHTI community more broadly or with the MAPC community more broadly, please fill out our spotlight form. We would be happy to post it in our LinkedIn, in our newsletter, and get the word out about good work that you all are doing, whether it's events, grant opportunities, other things. Yeah, so feel free to QR code that spotlight form and shout yourself out. We would love to help you do that. We do have all of these trainings recorded. So if you missed the one in the fall or the one from MAPC in April, we have a training library where you can go and watch those recordings. And feel free to follow us on LinkedIn too, where we post a lot of these different opportunities and things of that nature. And then finally, we would really appreciate it if you could fill out our feedback form about today. So I'll leave that up there for just a minute. If you could all grab that QR code, and I'll post it in the chat as well in a moment. But curious if any other questions have come up in the meantime.
I'm not seeing any, and probably all this talk about the food system has made people hungry as it is lunchtime. I know that I'm always guilty of that. So we can kind of close a little bit ahead of time, which is rare these days, but really just want to thank our panelists Anne, Usha, Stephanie, and Rebecca for this time. As you've heard, they are doing amazing work and they're amazing to work with as well. So that's just want to highlight that. Always looking for more ways that MAPC can support work and highlight the work you are all doing in this space. Food systems is my area of focus within the public health sphere. So I'm really interested in this intersection and highlighting all the great work that's happening and yeah, so please keep in touch and thank you all for attending today and for presenting.
We will share out links to everybody's organizations and any other resources that were shared today in a follow-up email. So keep an eye out for that if you're interested in following along with any of these wonderful folks. All right, I think we'll close out here. Thanks, everyone.